Welcome back. The Senate advancing its budget bill last night after Senator Joe Manchin abandoned his domestic energy permitting plan. His bill was dropped from the budget in order to avert a government shutdown. People weren't voting on it. Manchin's plan would have green-lit a pipeline in West Virginia, but critics said it would have also pushed the U.S. faster toward green energy and jeopardized energy independence. Joining us right now is Texas Congressman Jodey Arrington, a member of the House Ways and Means Committee. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thanks very much for being here. What happens when this bill makes its way over to the House?
Well, I hope Republicans will reject it. I think Manchin, first of all, outsmarted himself in the negotiations with his colleagues and probably put too much confidence in Chuck Schumer. But in terms of Republicans supporting a CR that adds more spending, I mean, Maria, the first thing we've got to do is stop the spending that has ignited this inflation. I mean, then you've got to look at what they're spending on, what their priorities are. I mean, they didn't get monkeypox and COVID, which were on the list from Joe Biden, but they're funding the FBI and State Department. Remember, the last $40 billion funding for Ukraine went to the State Department. And then you've got monies in there for energy assistance and nothing to get at the underlying problem, which is the whole of government assault by this administration against the fossil fuels industry. There's nothing about supply chains. There's nothing to do with the drug epidemic we're facing. And there's nothing about the root cause of that drug epidemic, which is the flood of drugs coming over our open borders.
Right.
So for all those reasons, I hope Republicans act like Republicans and reject it.
So you'll vote no then?
From what I understand about what's in there, I would vote no every day and twice on Sunday, as they say.
Well, I mean, it leads me to your op-ed, because you've got a recent Fox News op-ed, and you write, if Republicans take House, here's how they can solve U.S. debt and budget problems. You write this, quote, if we fail to prioritize fiscal reforms and continue politics as usual, Congress will eventually bankrupt the greatest country in human history. Tell us more. I mean, we're talking about what, $30+ trillion in debt, 40-year high inflation, and your colleagues on the left want to do more spending, and that is coming in the form of a rail agreement, I guess, after the midterm elections as well.
Yeah, the Democrats under this president and single-party rule have spent almost $5 trillion over the last 2 years. And CBO projects, and I think it's a conservative projection, that we'll add $16 trillion to the national debt, half of which is interest payments. We're almost at $500 billion in interest payments. As interest rates go up, we will be paying more on interest just to service the debt than all of national defense in less than 10 years. So to say this is an unsustainable path is an understatement. And Republicans have an historic opportunity. I think the window's closing. I think the debt crisis looms large on the horizon. And we've got to demonstrate to ourselves, to our own party and voters and voting base, that we can restore fiscal responsibility, rein in the spending, enforce budget controls like pay-fors and spending caps. You know, the 10-year spending cap has expired. There are no guardrails on spending going forward. These are the things that Republicans have to prioritize, or we'll find ourselves, Maria, in a crisis far worse than COVID, where we can't print enough money or borrow enough money to get out of the crisis.
Here's Brian Brenberg.
Congressman, I appreciate all that, but you've got a president who just with the stroke of a pen decided to give away $500 billion for a student loan handout. Even if Congress gets religion on spending, the president has the ability, apparently, to just continue to do things like this. How do you rein that in, Congressman?
Well, unfortunately, but I guess on the other side, fortunately, the last line of defense has been a newly appointed court. The federal judiciary has turned over at least half of them under the Trump administration. And so far, I'm very pleased with their decisions. And I think this will be another decision where they slap President Biden's hand as for overreaching and doing something that was unconstitutional, which is erasing an asset on our books and making it a liability just with the stroke of a pen. So I don't think that's going to going to play out. Fortunately, that's a disaster for sure. But look, we can stop the spending on day one. The Democrats have obsessed for the last 2 years over January 6th and how they can tax the American people and our competitiveness and spend us into oblivion. It went from about $3.5 trillion in the Build Back broke to $500 billion. So Republicans can, at a minimum, stop the spend, but then I think there's a whole lot more we've got to do to rein this out of control.
Well, the White House is not listening to the Committee for a Responsible Budget. They're not listening to the CBO, which yesterday said that the bailout is going to cost $420 billion. So we'll be watching all of that. The Committee for a Responsible Budget and the CBO confirms it's too expensive, Congressman. Good to see you this morning. Thanks very much. Jodey Arrington joining us this morning. We'll be watching.